Well, we have skeptics. They're unending, their points of view. When you come across a skeptical point of view, do yourself what you're supposed to be doing. Show yourself approved. Study it. Jacob's scheme, Genesis 30, to multiply spotted sheep. Does it contradict true science? Genesis 30, 25 to 43. It sounds a little bit magical. After Rachel gave birth to Joseph, Jacob said to Laban, "Send me on my way so I can go back to my own homeland. Give me my wives and children, for whom I have served you, and I will be on my way. You know how much work I've done for you." It's almost like slavery there. But Laban said to him, "If I have found favor in your eyes, please stay. I have learned by divination that the Lord has blessed me because of you." Divination. He added, "Name your wages and I will pay them." Jacob said to him, "You know how I have worked for you and how your livestock has fared under my care. The little you had before I came has increased greatly, and the Lord has blessed you wherever I have been. But now when I may do something for my own household, what shall I give you?" See, but he says, now when may I do something for my own household? Well, Laban said, "What shall I give you?" he asked. "Don't give me anything," Jacob replied. "But if you will do this one thing for me, I will go on tending your flocks and watching over them." Scheming again. Not looking to the Lord, I think. "Let me go through all of your flocks today and remove from them every speckled or spotted sheep, every dark-colored lamb, and every spotted or speckled goat. They will be my wages, and my honesty will testify for me in the future. Whenever you check on the wages, you have paid me. Any goat in my possession that is not speckled or spotted, or any lamb that is not dark-colored, will be considered stolen." "Agreed," said Laban. "Let it be as you have said." People go into their own machinations here, instead of just simply trusting in the Lord. That same day he removed all the male goats that were streaked or spotted, and all the speckled or spotted female goats, all that had white on them, and all the dark-colored lambs, and he placed them in the care of his sons. Then he put a 3-day journey between himself and Jacob continued to tend the rest of Laban's flocks. Jacob, however, took fresh-cut branches from poplar, almond, and plane trees and made white stripes on them by peeling the bark and exposing the white inner wood of the branches. Sounds like a magical act here. Then he placed the peeled branches in all the watering troughs, so that they would be directly in front of the flocks when they came to drink. When the flocks were in heat and came to drink, they mated in front of the branches, and they bore young that were streaked or speckled or spotted. It does sound like a magician's trick. Jacob set apart the young of the flock by themselves, but made the rest face the streaked and dark-colored animals that belonged to Laban. Thus he made separate flocks for himself and did not put them with Laban's animals. Whenever the stronger females were in heat, Jacob would place the branches in the troughs in front of the animals so that they would mate near the branches. But if the animals were weak, he would not place them there. So the weak animals went to Laban, and the strong ones to Jacob. In this way, the man grew exceedingly prosperous and came to own large flocks and maidservants and men servants and camels and donkeys. Well, a guy named Farrell Till, he has a point of view on this. He claims that the Bible is full of errors, pointing to this particular passage as an example. Interesting, when you run up against a skeptic, they'll try to flood you and overwhelm you with one thing after another. You have to slow them down, if that's possible. Say, "Look, give me your best shot, one thing at a time, and let's see." If you can't give me your best shot right off the bat, discussion's over because you're not interested in learning the truth of the matter. In chapter 30, Till says, he told of Jacob's scheme to increase his wealth while he was still in the employ of his father-in-law Laban. The two had reached an agreement whereby Jacob would be given all striped, spotted, and speckled lambs and kids subsequently born in Laban's flocks. Laban then removed all the striped, spotted, and speckled animals from his flocks and put them in his son's care at a 3-day journey distance from the flock Jacob attended. Not to be outsmarted, Jacob devised a plan. Then Jacob took fresh rods of poplar and almond and plane and peeled white streaks in them, exposing the white of the rods. He set the rods that he had peeled in front of the flocks in the troughs, that is, the watering places, where the flocks came to drink. And since they bred, when they came to drink, the flocks bred in front of the rods, so the flocks produced young that were striped, speckled, and spotted. The editors of the New American Bible were reputable enough to affix a frankly honest footnote to this passage. It says, Jacob's stratagem was based on the widespread notion among simple people that visual stimuli can have prenatal effects on the offspring of breeding animals. Thus, the rods in which Jacob had whittled stripes or bands or chevron marks were thought to cause the female goats that looked at them to bear kids with lighter colored marks on their dark hair, while the gray ewes were thought to bear lambs with dark marks on them simply by visual crossbreeding with the dark goats. We know today that the color characteristics of animals is purely a matter of genetics, so a modern scientifically educated person would never write anything as obviously superstitious as this tale of Jacob's prosperity. So, let me repeat. We know today that the color characteristics of animals is purely a matter of genetics. So a modern scientifically educated person would never write anything as obviously superstitious as this tale of Jacob's prosperity. And skeptics of the Bible have a field day with this passage. The Genesis writers, however, knew nothing about the science of genetics. So to him, the story undoubtedly made good sense. Sarcasm there. Well, it's a legitimate point, except let's do a closer analysis of the passage, which results in scientific accuracy as well as an indication of God's sovereignty in all matters. Henry Morris, in his book, The Genesis Record, this is one of my Bibles of research I've used, Genesis Record by Henry Morris. By this time, Jacob had more than fulfilled his contract with Laban. He had agreed to serve with him 7 more years, and more than that period of time must have elapsed by the time his 4 wives had borne him 11 or 12 children. He was with Laban a total of 20 years altogether, including the 14 years he had served for Leah and Rachel. Since the first 7 years had been prior to his 2 marriages, all of his 11 sons and 1 daughter must have been born during a 13-year period at most. Jacob now had a large family, and his work had been highly productive on Laban's behalf, but he still had nothing of his own. He was also anxious to go home again. Moving on, Genesis 30, 25 to 28. After Rachel gave birth to Joseph, Jacob said to Laban, "Send me on my way so I can go back to my own homeland. Give me my wives and children for whom I have served you, and I will be on my way. You know how much I have done work for you." But Laban said to him, "I have found favor in your eyes. If I have found favor in your eyes, please stay. I have learned divination, that the Lord has blessed me because of you." He added, "Name your wages and I will pay them." So, we're just reviewing those verses that have a handle on the context. All important context. Finally, Jacob went to Laban and announced his decision to return to his home. He intended further to take his wives and all his children with him. He reminded Laban that he had more than lived up his part of the bargain, so that he had no further moral or legal claim on him or his family. Now, to continue the review, Laban, however, was very reluctant to see him go. He had prospered greatly because of Jacob's abilities and faithfulness, and he was willing to make almost any bargain that would keep him working for him. Laban even acknowledged that the Lord was with Jacob, and that it was of the Lord that he had profited so much through Jacob. Once more, he had gotten the better bargain by letting Jacob name his own wages. So now he made the same proposition again. Jacob had merely to name this price, and Laban assured him that he would meet it if Jacob would only keep working for him. He had no other daughters to offer Jacob, of course, so this time the arrangement would have to be one of an actual payment of money or property. That's why Jacob got married 2 wives, because he wanted Leah, but the other daughter he offered first because she was the eldest. Laban's offer seemed generous, but later developments showed he did not actually intend to let Jacob leave with anything. The phrase learned by experience, learned by divination in the NIV is interesting. It represents the Hebrew word nashash and means literally learned by enchantments. Laban had been somewhat perplexed by the fact that Jacob's care of his flocks had resulted in such a great increase in his own wealth. Accordingly, he had in some way either carried out certain divination practices of his own, or else consulted some kind of soothsayer or oracle, seeing the secret. Laban, it becomes clear, though related to Abraham and knowing about Jehovah, had become to some degree a pagan mystic. At any rate, God so overruled his enchantments that even through them he had gotten the message that Jacob was under the special care of Jehovah, and that it was because of this that God had blessed his service. So moving on to Genesis 30, 29 to 30. See, good to read the scripture as you go. Jacob said to him, "You know how I've worked for you and how your livestock has fared under my care. The little you had before I came has increased greatly, and the Lord has blessed you wherever I've been. But now, when I may do something for my own household." "When?" he says. "What shall I give you?" he asked. "Don't give me anything," Jacob replied. "But if you will do this one thing for me, I will go on tending your flocks and watching over them. Let me go through all your flocks today and remove from them every speckled or spotted sheep, every dark-colored lamb, every spotted or speckled goat. They will be my wages, and my honesty will testify for me in the future. Whenever you check on the wages, you have paid me. Any goat in my possession that is not speckled or spotted, or any lamb that is not dark-colored, and will be considered stolen." "Agreed," said Laban. Let it be as you have said." Okay, we've reviewed that. Morris then concludes. This is Morris's commentary. Jacob had apparently through the years said a little about all this, simply keeping his agreement with Laban to the best of his ability. Laban, on his part, had evidently never before admitted openly to Jacob that he knew it was because of Jacob and Jacob's God that he had prospered so much in recent years. Jacob therefore took this opportunity to give his own testimony to this effect, indicating to Laban that he well knew all this, but had until now refrained from using it to his own advantage. He had been completely responsible for Laban's flocks for over 14 years, and a relatively small number of animals had become a great multitude under his care. This blessing had indeed come from Jehovah, though Jacob had done his part by faithful and industrious service. Now, however, it was reasonable that he, Jacob, having fulfilled all his commitments to Laban, should begin to provide for his own family. Laban again, therefore, asked what he could give him to make him stay. Jacob did not wish Laban to give him anything. He had learned that God would supply what he wanted him to have, and he did not wish to be indebted in any way to a man whom he had come to know as a self-seeking, deceptive, ungodly schemer. He therefore made a proposition to Laban which would give God the opportunity to bless Jacob materially also, as he had Laban through Jacob. This plan would bring blessing to Jacob without taking advantage of anything belonging to Laban. Though Laban had doubtless expected Jacob to ask for a certain number of animals to begin his own flocks and herds, he would have been willing, at least outwardly, to give him whatever he would ask. Jacob would not take anything of Laban's which then existed. Instead, he agreed to shepherd and supervise Laban's flocks exactly as he had been doing, and his pay would consist of those animals yet unborn that would be less desirable to Laban because of their markings. It would be thus entirely up to God as to how many animals would become Jacob's. Henry Morris goes on to say, Jacob agreed that none of the solid color animals would be taken into his own flocks. If any should be found by Laban in Jacob's flocks, Laban would have the right to take them out. Only those future animals that would be born